against ISO 27701. My name is Ashraf Abdul Hamid. I'm the cybersecurity consultant at iExperts, and I'm pleased to be with you today to explain and discuss the requirements of the 27701 and the how to get certified, the roadmap for certification. So first of all, the main objective of ISO 27701 is for protecting the privacy. So privacy is one of the key human rights that should be protected. And there are many laws and regulations that are mainly concerned with the privacy as one of the key human rights. So ISO 27701, so that will enhance the privacy information management system in the organization and will help the organization to be more compliant against laws and regulations like, for example, GDPR in Europe. So that's well, the implementation of ISO 27701 will improve the practices, processes in the organization so that it will improve the privacy management in the organization. We can look at 27701 as an extension to ISO 27001 and 27002. We cannot say that 27001 and 002 are prerequisites for 27701, but we can say that it's organizations that already certified against 27001 will be in a better place to implement 701, and it will be easier for the organizations that already certified against 27001. It will be better for them, and it's going to be easier for them to certify 27701, because actually most of the requirements and the controls are based on the 27001. So 27001, so a brief about 27001. So this is for the information security management system. It is one of the well-known standards for managing the information security in the organization. 27002, this is a list of controls, or the controls that are required to manage the or mitigate the risk inside the organization. Okay, so if we look quickly at 27001, so it's a list of requirements to be fulfilled by the organization and list of controls. So when we implement, or when we adopt 27001, so firstly we look at the context of the organization. Okay, so the information security management system to be in a context. This context is understanding the internal external environment, the laws and regulations, and so on, and this is supported by the management. So there is a leadership commitment. This is for the policy and for the roles and responsibilities in the organization. Planning for the risk management and risk assessment, to know what are the relevant risks to the organizations and how to mitigate them. Support in terms of communication, awareness, and competence of the team who are running and who are implementing the standards. Okay, operations. So this is to put the risk assessment into a continuous process. Okay, and to implement the controls. Performance evaluation, to ensure that you are going in the right direction. There are some measures and some measurements to ensure that the progress, or the progress in going in the right direction. And this also including the internal audit and ensuring that there are no non-conformities, and if there are any non-conformities, to be addressed by the team. Okay, improvements. So this is a continuous improvement. So this is a list of requirements for 27001 for implementing information security management system. So in addition to these requirements, the 7 requirements, so we have in Annex A the list of controls to be implemented by the organization to mitigate the risks that the organization face. Okay, so this is the list of controls. So there are 93 controls divided into 4 groups. A group for the organization control, one for the physical, people, and technology. So these are the 5 groups and 93 controls to be implemented. So this is actually, so this is when you implement 27701. So you take into account these requirements and controls. So if you don't have, or if the organization didn't implement or didn't implement yet 27001, so in that case, the organization will have to adopt the requirements and the most of the controls in 27002. Also, what I'd like to mention here is the organization gets certified against 27001. 27002 for the controls that are part of the 27001. Okay, so that's why we look at 27701 as an extension to 27001. So if the organization is already implemented 001, so in that case, that can be the base for building 27701 and build on that, and instead of starting from the scratch. Okay, and 27701, the organization can get certification against it. So as I was saying, the main concern and the main objective of the 27701 is to protect the privacy of people, okay, as one of the key human rights. So when we talk about the privacy, so mainly we are referring to the PII, the personal identifiable information. Personal identifiable information, what I mean by that is what are the data or the information that can identify a person. So that identifying the person, so it can be a standalone. So it means that from the one data item, so you can identify the person. For example, the credit debit card, the social security number, the mortgage application ID, the passport or the ID number. So this is as a data item. So in itself, it can identify the person. So in that case, it is in a standalone, it is a PII. Combined, it means that if, for example, you have the first and last name of the other person, but the first and last name cannot identify the person by themselves. Okay, so if that is combined with the resident address, so in that case, it becomes unidentifiable information. So this can identify the person. Okay, so the first, last name, and the date of birth, also that can identify the person. So in that case, it means that the PII, so if it is the data item in itself can identify the person, like the ID, the passport ID, and so on. So that is the PII. Or if it's combined, for example, the first, last name, and the residence or date of birth. So in that case, it's also PII. Okay, so let's talk now about the advantages of the organization that gets certified against 27701. So firstly, that will improve the privacy in the organization. Improving the privacy, it means that the organization will embed the privacy management into its practices. For example, in any project, there's going to be a privacy impact assessment. Also in the disposal, the transfer of the data. So that's also the privacy will be taken into account. The mobile and teleworking, also the privacy will be taken into account. So in all these practices, the privacy will have will be an important concept that will be taken into account. So the organization, when adopting 27701, it will improve the privacy practices in the organization. Okay, and also it will protect the data from breaches. So by following the controls and the best practices of the standards, so this will decrease or this will protect the data from breaches. And also this will increase the international recognition. So the international recognition, so an organization that is certified, so it means certified again as 27701, it will mean that the organization is following the best practices for protecting the privacy. And also this will improve customer satisfaction. So the organization will be more transparent with its clients and with the data subject. So it will improve the customer satisfaction. Customers will be more satisfied when the privacy is managed in a better way. Okay, so this is, for example, when we look at web providers like, or cloud providers like, for example, AWS, the Amazon, we see that, for example, they have a privacy policy that has all the, for example, all the information in a transparent way about how the data is collected, how the data will is treated, how the data will be transferred, and so on. So that will improve the privacy, transparency, and that will, as a result, will improve the customer satisfactions as well. And of course, this will be as in marketing, so this organizations can market using the being certified. So this will be used as in marketing, that the organization is following the best practices and the standards for the privacy. So when we look at the structure of the 27701, so as I was saying, so we look at it as an extension to ISO 27001. Okay, so looking at that, so we find that first of all, the standard has 4 main clauses. Okay, when we look at the clause 5, so this is the requirements related to ISO 27001. So it means that if you implement 27001, so you need to have some adjustments or some amendments to complement what you have as 27001. Okay, so this is complementing what you have, building on what you have in 27001. Okay, so if, as I was saying, if you don't have 27, or if you are not, if you haven't implemented 27001, you have to implement the requirements first of 27001, and you add the privacy into account. Okay, and then when we look at clause 6, so this is for the specific guidance for 27002. So if you remember when I was saying 27002, so this is a list of controls related to mitigating the risks of the organization, okay, as part of 27001. So here in clause 6, so this is what are the amendments required and what are the requirements to be, or the amendments required to be added to 27002 controls in order to be compliant with ISO 27701. Okay, so if we look at the standard, the 27001, 27701. So here we look at okay, so we find here, so this is as you can see, so these are the list of controls that are related, list of requirements that are related to 27001. So if you remember the points we spoke about in 27001, you will find them here. So here, the context of the organization, if you remember, so the internal, external environment, and so on, the leadership, and the commitment and the policies approved by them, the planning in terms of risk management and so on, risk assessment and the treatment, the support, and the performance evaluation and improvement. So if you can, if you remember when we spoke about 27001, so this is the same requirements, we discussed them in 27001. Okay, so here are when we speak about 27701, so what are the amendments to 27001? Okay, so we have some amendments to 27001 in order to be compliant, or in order to fulfill the requirements of 27701. So if you haven't implemented 27001, you have to implement these requirements. Okay, so in the end, as I was saying, it is 27001 is not a prerequisite, but in the end, you will have to implement the requirements of 27001 if you haven't implemented it. Okay, and when we look at the 27002, so if you remember the controls, so here also we have some amendments, but here, when we look at 27002, so this is related to the previous version of the 27002. Okay, so this is for the previous version of 2713, because the last version of 27701 is 2019. Okay, so the last version of the last version of the 27002 was established after after the 27701. So this is, we are relating now to the old version of the 27002. Okay, so here when we look at this, so we find also the list of requirements, or the list of controls for 27002, and what are the amendments required for the privacy. Okay, so what are the amendments required to add the privacy into account? So these are the clauses 5 and 6. When we look at clause 7 and 8, so these are the additional controls in addition to the controls in 27002. Okay, so we have here additional controls for privacy in addition to the controls we have in 27002 that we will amend, okay, or will change, or will update to satisfy the requirements of 27701. Okay, so we have a list of additional requirements. We have two sets of requirements. A set of requirements for the PII as a controller or as a processor. Okay, so we have two roles. We'll speak about them. So if the organization is only providing or is only acting as a controller, so in that case, so they will implement clauses 5, 6, and 7, and that's it. If the organization is only a processor, then it will implement 5 and 7 and 8. If the organization can act as controller and the processor, they will implement the 4 clauses. Okay, so the one is, as I was saying, this is for the amendments for the requirements of 27001. This is mandatory, and the requirements for 27002 mandatory. And then based on the role of the organization, it will implement the required controls based on the role. So if the role is controller, then it will implement only the requirements of the controls in 7. If the organization is acting as a processor, then it will implement the controls in 8. If the organization is acting as controller and the processor, they will implement both 7 and 8 in addition to 5 and 6. Okay, so in a brief, I mentioned the organization role as a controller or as a processor. So what it means, in a nutshell, we have 3 key roles when speaking about the privacy. So we have the role of the data subject. Data subject is the person that the data is being collected from. So that can be an employee, for example, it can be a user on a system, it can be a customer, and so on. So this is the person that the data is being collected from. Controller, so this is the role of the entity that is collecting and responsible for the collection from the data subject. And they are the ones who set the control design for protecting the subject, okay, the data subject. When we talk about the processor, so the processor is the entity that will process the data based on the recommendations and based on the instructions from the controller. So for example, let's say that the organization, for example, an employer is collecting data from the employee, for example, and then the data is stored in a cloud. So the cloud, in that case, the cloud provider will be the processor. Okay, the company will be the controller, and the employee will be the subject. Okay, so these are the key roles in the privacy. Okay, so as I was saying, so if the organization is only acting as a controller, so in that case, it will implement the requirements in clauses 5 and 6 and 7. Okay, if it is a processor acting as a processor, it will implement the requirements and controls in 5, 6, and 8. If the organization is acting as both, so in that case, it will implement 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So let's now talk about briefly about the roadmap. So how to get ISO 27701 certification. So first of all, the organization need to prepare for that and have the understanding of the requirements of 27701, the legal and regulatory requirements, and so on. So this is preparation and understanding of the requirements of 27701. After that, the organization do a quick gap assessment. Gap assessment, so this is the organization is not starting from the scratch. So every organization has already some practices and they can build on the practices they have. Okay, so I'm not starting from the scratch. So if they have already some controls and some practices, they can build on the practices. So gap assessment, gap analysis, so that will make the organization focus on what really needs to be done against 27701. After that, the scope definition. Scope definition is very important, so that the team should focus on what is the scope that will be included under the 27701. So if the organization has many, for example, has many branches, has many websites, so what is the scope we are talking about? So this is very important to focus the efforts on the right scope. Privacy risk assessment. So as we did in 27001, so privacy risk assessment. So this is very important to do a risk assessment for the privacy. Okay, so this is as we did with the information security risk management or risk assessment. We do the same for privacy. So here, what are the risks that the organization face for the privacy? Okay, so what kind of threats the organization, or what kind of threats that can exploit vulnerabilities that we have. The threats, as you know, don't have to be threats in terms of attacker, for example. So the threat can be a legal threat. Threat can be, for example, the dissatisfactions from users, from customers, and so on. Okay, and after that, we define the objectives. Okay, so the objectives of the based on what are the objectives based on the privacy risk assessment. So the objectives and controls to be implemented. After that, we start the documentation and the processes. Documentation based on the what's required, what's required to be changed, as we saw in, for example, in 27001 or 27002. So what kind of controls required to be, for example, modified, or what kind of documents that don't currently exist and need to be created. Okay, after we complete the documentation, then we do the training and awareness. Training and awareness, so we ensure that everyone in the organization that is related to the directly or indirectly to the privacy or the private information or private data, they should be trained. Okay, so the training and awareness should be based on the privacy. Okay, so this is mainly for the privacy. And so the training and awareness should be based on what kind of risks the organization might face, and what are the best practices, and what are the everyone role in protecting the privacy. So this will be the scope of the training and awareness. After that, we start the operational implementation. So based on the gap assessment and based on the documentation and based on the objectives, so based on all of that, so we start the implementation of the operational implementation. So we put all of that into action. Measurement and evaluation. So we should have some measurements to ensure that we are going in the right direction. Okay, and ensure that the progress is as planned. Okay, very important, the internal audit, as we the same we have in 27001, the same here. The internal audit is very important to define if we have identify if we have any non-conformities. So that should be identified in order to be mitigated or to be closed. Okay, then a management review. All the results should be reviewed by the management. So we present to the management the results of the risk assessment, the results of the progress, the non-conformities, and the mitigations in the internal audit, and so on. So this is to be presented to the management review. Management review, as you know, it's a continuous management review. So this is not a one-off, but this is required at least one before the external audit. Okay, and this, as you know, so 27701, like in other ISO standard, it's a continuous improvement. So this is not a one-off activity, but it is a continuous improvement that should be improved over time. Okay. After that, you choose the certification body that is well trusted to certify the organization against 27701. And this, as you know, this webinar is provided by iExperts. So iExperts had the expert that can help any organization in the journey and getting certified in ISO 27701 and other ISO standards. So the iExpert can provide the support and help to organizations to do that in a very quick and very professional way. So instead of, an organization, instead of doing try and error, so iExpert can lead the way in the right direction and can get or can make the organization get the certification in a very planned way in a very short time. So that was it from my end. I hope that it was clear to everyone, and the floor is now open for questions. So if you have any question, or if there anything that is not very clear, I am very happy to help answering your questions. So I believe that there's somebody is trying to speak, but the mic is muted. Okay, I have a question here. So 27701. So this is based on yeah, that's exactly right. So as Muhammad Yamani said, so this is based on what the organization, what the maturity level of the organization, and especially in 27001. So if the organization has implemented 27001 and already certified, so this will make it very easy for the organization to certify against 27701. So 27001 will shorten the way by far. If the organization hasn't implemented 27001, so this will make the way longer. Okay, so I would expect for certifications like 27001 to take from 3 to 6 months to be completed. 27701, if the organization has already implemented 27001, I would expect 3 to 6 months also to be enough for certifying against 27701. Okay, and that's also again based on the scope and based on the maturity of the organization. Okay, so the capabilities of 27701. So this is one of the so as you know, the capabilities in terms of education experience and the know-how. So if the organization, if the team in the organization already, you have the capabilities and you have the education and experience required in your team, and that can implement 27, for example, 27001, the same team can implement or can help in the implementation of 27701. So this is the capabilities in terms of cybersecurity and in terms of IT for the controls and so on, and to know to have the knowledge of the privacy requirements and to be aware of the laws and regulations in the country in the region. So, for example, in Europe, for example, so the team should be aware of the requirements of GDPR, for example, because this will be the base of implementing 27701. Okay, another question for the applicability of 27701. So this is the applicability. So this is, as I was saying in the beginning. So the applicability of that. So this is based mainly on. This is mainly for the privacy. So this is to protect one of the human rights, which is the privacy. So the 27701 is mainly for protecting the privacy of the of people. Okay, and this is to make the organization more more compliant with legal and regulatory requirements like GDPR, for example. So any more questions? Okay, thank you, Ahmed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your attendance. I hope that it was clear, and I hope that this will help you in your journey. Thank you so much, and goodbye and good luck.